the second year after Evan dragged me back to make me pay for my sins. I went blind. He didn't believe me. He left me alone on the mountaintop after sunset. His voice was indifferent. Stop pretending. Walk back to the mansion yourself. If you're not back before curfew, you know what will happen. As I fell to the bottom of the cliff, I heard Evan come back for me. Steve, come out. This is your last chance. Blood pooled around me as I slowly closed my eyes. But Evan, I don't have any more chances to give you. The pain seemed to disappear. All I could feel was the blood spreading out from under me. Almost there. I thought numbly. Soon I'll be free. And when that happens, Evan's anger will finally cool down completely. He always said I was a sinner, that I could never fully atone. Now I'm giving him my life. That should satisfy him, right? The bottom of the cliff was silent. Suddenly, a voice echoed from the mountaintop. Faintly, I recognized Evan's voice. He was as certain and stern as ever. Steve, I know you're hiding here. Come out. This is your last chance. I opened my mouth, but my weak voice vanished in the wind. Evan, we're out of chances. The leaves rustled in the wind. The only answer he received was a hollow echo. I slowly closed my eyes, feeling the wind gently lift my body, then set it down again. When I opened my eyes, I could see again. Evan's sharp, cold face was right in front of me. I asked in a small voice, "Why did you come back?" He was so determined to make me admit I was faking my blindness, then punish me by making me walk back to the mansion alone. Why come back to find me? Evan didn't answer. His gaze passed right through me, focusing on something in the distance. I looked down at my own translucent body. I see. I'm a ghost now. The sky had grown completely dark. Evan stood silently, the already sharp line of his jaw tightening even more. If you want to leave, then just walk back yourself. He said coldly, Steve, you brought this on yourself. I stood across from Evan. I didn't silently endure his cold words like I usually did. Instead, I looked down over the cliff. My body was lying there peacefully, like a dirty red dot. I lowered my head and said softly, I didn't leave. I'm right here, right where you could see me if you just looked down. I didn't want to follow Evan, but my soul was not under my control. As if being pulled, I followed him down the mountain path. Clearview Mountain was the best spot in J City to watch the sunset. In high school, I was always begging Evan to bring me here. Back then, he agreed every single time. Not like this time where I had to beg him for weeks. I just wanted to see it one more time, before I went completely blind. I wanted one last look at the orange sun hanging over the mountain peak. One last look at Evan's face against the vast, colorful sunset. But Evan just glanced at me. Steve, you think things are still the same? He scoffed. You don't get to make demands anymore. Later, I told him my eyes were getting worse, that I was almost blind. Evan just laughed. Oh, really? Too bad. I suddenly feel like watching the sunset. Since you can't see, we might as well forget it. Let's go. I jerked my head up, grabbing his arm, then slowly letting go. Then I said in a low voice, let's go. I'll be fine. Please, let's go. Just one last time. Ha, Evan sneered. Fine. My vision was blurry. I couldn't see his expression. I could only hear the disdain and amusement in his voice. But I was still so happy. I had no idea this was just a trap Evan had set. He was convinced I was faking it. So he left me alone on the mountaintop. My soul followed behind Evan, down the winding, lamp-lit road. The shadows of the trees by the road flickered, and a rustling sound came from them. Steve. Evan let out a breath, stopped, and shouted sternly, come out. I looked at his back, surprised. Could he sense that I was here? Just as I was about to walk up to Evan, a person emerged from the bushes. Emily? Evan frowned at her. What are you doing here? Emily was Evan's fiancée, an arranged marriage from childhood. She had chased him to his house a few times. She was always spoiled and arrogant. But now she was disheveled, her eyes filled with panic. Steve, Emily forced a smile. He didn't come down with you? Evan narrowed his eyes, retorting, were you following us? No, no. She waved her hands frantically. You don't have to see him as a rival, Evan said flatly. He's just a sinner. He won't affect the marriage between our families. The cold night wind felt like 1,000 needles, piercing right through my soul. I stood in front of Evan and said softly, "You're the one who sees me as a rival." Evan looked in my direction, but there was no reflection of me in his deep, dark eyes. He walked straight through me. "Let's go," he said. "Don't worry about him." Emily got in the car and sat in the back. The road was clear, but Evan drove slowly. The closer we got to the mansion, the tighter his grip on the steering wheel became. Veins popped out on his hands. It was like a suppressed rage was about to explode. Before we even reached the mansion, Evan suddenly slammed on the brakes. Caught off guard, Emily's purse, which had been on her lap, was thrown onto the car's floor mat. A blood-stained diamond bracelet slid out of the bag. Evan frowned. "Get out. Call a cab." Emily's hands trembled as she gathered her things and hurried out of the car. For the rest of the way, Evan floored it. I followed him into the mansion. I watched him roar at the small room at the turn of the second-floor landing. "Steve, I told you to walk back. Who the hell do you think you are? Taking a cab?" The mansion was spotless, cold, and silent. Evan's face darkened, his anger seeming to grow. The old butler walked over and said, "Didn't Master Steve go out with you?" "Sir?" Evan frowned. "He's not back yet?" "No," the butler rambled on. "Master Steve said he'd be back with you when he left. He hasn't been this happy in a long time. He even asked me if he looked nice today. Young Master Steve has always been a handsome boy. Stop calling him Master." Evan's back was rigid as he cut the butler off. "He's just the housekeeper's son. My mother liked him, so I treated him like a brother. But my mother is long gone. So, after living together under the same roof for 15 years, I was always just the housekeeper's son, right?" A burning pain flooded my chest. I stared at him wordlessly, suddenly feeling like such a fool. I'd naively thought I was different. Even after what happened 4 years ago, I thought that after I served my time, after Evan had let out all his anger, we could go back to the way we were. "Sir, should I send someone to look for Moss? For Mr. Steve?" "No need." Evan refused the butler's offer. He walked upstairs to his study with a cold face. "He won't die out there. Let him learn his lesson." As he went upstairs, a small white dog bounded down from the second floor. It was Cotton Candy. Cotton Candy looked up at Evan, tilting his little head. Then he let out an annoyed bark. We had adopted Cotton Candy, a Maltese, 4 years ago. He had gotten very sick before he was even a month old. His owner abandoned him at the vet. I dragged Evan to see him. I begged him, shaking his arm. "The puppy's so pitiful. Please, let's save him." Evan looked down at me and said, "I've already got my hands full with one clingy puppy like you. Now you want me to raise 2? I just grinned at him shamelessly, and Evan gave in. He went into the vet clinic and paid a large sum for his medical bills. Not long after, the vet called to say the dog had recovered. I held him and went to find Evan, saying sweetly, "Hey, bro, let's take him home. But, can you tell your mom that you're the one who wanted him?" But in the end, Evan's mom kept Cotton Candy because she knew I liked him. She was a wonderful person, kind and gentle, and so tolerant of me. Sometimes Evan and I would skip class to take the dog to the beach, and the 3 of us would come back covered in mud. She never got mad. She'd just laugh and tell us to go take a shower, then place a freshly baked cake on the dining table for us to eat together. But then, "Shut up. You bark again, and you can get out of this house too." Evan yelled at Cotton Candy, then slammed the study door shut. The little dog whimpered and actually looked over at me. I squatted down, wanting to pet him but unable to touch him. I could only whisper, "It's okay, Cotton Candy. You miss me, don't you? But what can I do? You probably won't ever see me again." The little dog didn't understand death. He was just confused about why Evan had taken me out, but hadn't brought me home. Cotton Candy wouldn't give up. He trotted over on his short legs and started scratching at the study door. He pawed and barked, as if he were lodging a complaint. Suddenly, A heavy object hit the door from inside with a loud thud. Cotton Candy was terrified. He tucked his tail between his legs and fled to the end of the second-floor hall. I passed through the door. I saw the thick dictionary that had fallen behind it. On the open title page, 2 names were written. Evan's first, Steve's right after. He had given me the dictionary. My 15-year-old self had childishly written my name right next to his, as if that could bring me closer to the person I loved. The phone on the desk vibrated. Evan answered. Mr. Miller. The voice on the other end was faint, asking about Emily's whereabouts. Evan's tone was distant. Sorry, I'm not sure. The person on the other end spoke for a while longer. His patience wore out. I'm very busy lately, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. The engagement will have to be postponed. Don't ask again. With that, Evan hung up. He held the phone, pressing it to his forehead. Then he quickly dialed a number. Take a few men. Search the area around Clearview Mountain and the roads leading back to the mansion. Find Steve. After hanging up, Evan slowly walked to the door, picked up the dictionary, and opened it. 2 pages were marked with sticky tabs. Back then, I stood in front of Evan just like this. I proudly held up the dictionary. Bro, look, our names are only a few pages apart. We're so close. Ha, so stupid. Mountains and islands are separated by so much. Like the deep sea, like life and death. A bitter ache rose in my chest. I looked up at Evan's deep-set eyes and brows. I whispered, bro, you'll never find me again. Today. You lost me. Evan's whole body tensed. He pulled his phone from his pocket and answered, Did you find him? I was so close. I could clearly hear the voice on the other end. We couldn't find him, but we found records that Mr. Smith recently had an appointment at the City Eye Hospital. Evan froze for a second. The Eye Hospital? Yes, sir. Mr. Smith's eyes. It seems there's something wrong with them. Impossible. Evan slammed his hand on the desk, grinding his teeth. I don't want seems like. Get the facts straight before you call me again. He slammed the phone down. Evan started looking at his documents, not saying a word. The night was silent. Just like 4 years ago, I sat quietly on the cashmere rug beside the desk. Back then, Evan was 2 grades ahead of me, buried in schoolwork. He would study and do practice problems at his desk. And I would be on this rug, lost in a book or occasionally causing trouble. When a story moved me to tears, Evan would sigh and bring me a tissue. Then he'd tease me for being childish. The nights were just as quiet back then. Even the scent of magnolia blossoms drifting in through the window hadn't changed. Only we had. My throat ached. A warm tear streamed down my cheek. See? Now he would never come to wipe my tears away again. Evan finally threw the file in his hands onto the desk. For the past half an hour, he had been frowning at the very same page. Evan suddenly let out a cold laugh. He muttered to himself, Steve, I really underestimated you. Getting a fake diagnosis from a hospital, you're capable of anything now. I looked at his face, full of anger. I thought silently, I didn't get a fake diagnosis and I didn't lie to you. My vision loss started at night and slowly crept into the day. At first, it was night blindness. Then, I started having trouble seeing when it got even a little dark. I told Evan. He just looked at me coldly and said, Playing the victim card won't work anymore. Steve, when you're actually blind, I'll be sure to throw you far, far away. At the time, I thought he probably will. After all, he hated me so much. Since I was little, I believed every word Evan said. Every single one. But now, I've already disappeared from Evan's life. So why is he still unhappy? In the bedroom, Evan's breathing was uneven. He tried hard to sleep, but his eyelashes kept trembling. He tossed and turned restlessly. Then he sat up and checked his phone, as if he were afraid of missing an important message. I don't know how much time passed. A sudden clap of thunder shook the night sky. Don't be scared. Evan seemed to be half asleep, wrapping his arm around the half of the blanket beside him, patting it gently. Steve, it's okay, don't be scared. Then, the muscles in his arm suddenly stiffened. Evan opened his eyes. He let out a heavy sigh and didn't fall back asleep. just before dawn. Evan got up and left the bedroom. Still in his pajamas, he grabbed a trench coat from the rack by the door and headed out. I was forced to follow behind, not knowing where he was going. Definitely not to find me. Just as he opened the door, his phone rang. He gripped the doorknob tightly with one hand and answered with the other. It was his assistant's voice. I just received a call from the doctor at the eye hospital. Evan's voice was hoarse. What did he say? The doctor said Mr. Smith was scheduled for a follow-up yesterday, but he didn't show up. He's worried that something might have happened to Mr. Smith because he can't see. By the time we got to the eye hospital, Mr. White was with a patient. Evan stood waiting at the door of the examination room, his fists clenched. The heavy atmosphere around him scared the other waiting patients into giving him a wide berth. The moment he entered the room, Evan demanded, "What did Steve offer you? To make you help him lie to me?" I stood behind him, silently mouthing an apology to Mr. White. He was a very good ophthalmologist. After my checkup, he had even taken my number. He said he would remind me about follow-up appointments and suggested I call him if I ran into any trouble. Mr. White looked up at Evan and said coldly, "You're not the gentleman I spoke with this morning. Please have him come in. He's just my assistant." Evan nearly shouted, then lowered his voice. "I don't understand why Steve didn't leave my number, but I'm his brother. Please, tell me everything about his condition." "Brother? No, not anymore, you said so yourself." After I got out of prison, Evan stopped answering my calls. He always had his assistant relay any messages, so why would I have left his number? In the end, since my emergency contact was his assistant, Evan had to stand outside the door and eavesdrop. Yesterday was his follow-up appointment, but I couldn't reach Mr. Smith on his phone. His vision is deteriorating too quickly. Lately, he can't even see clearly during the day. The last time he came in, his leg was all bruised from falling. Hearing this, Evan's gaze flickered. His right hand shot out and gripped the doorknob, as if he were about to burst in. Then he heard the rest of what Mr. White said. In Mr. Smith's current condition, it's really not safe for him to be out on his own. So where is he now? Have you people been taking proper care of him? He couldn't answer. Evan's whole body went rigid, his expression growing darker. I had begged for mercy, telling him my leg wouldn't bend, that it hurt so much. Evan ignored me, continuing his rough panting, making the pain worse. The scrapes and bruises from stumbling around were mixed in with the marks Evan made. They seemed insignificant. The person who used to frown if I even got a paper cut now called me a faker and an attention seeker. "I'll never believe a word you say again. Steve, you don't deserve it." That's what he said a year ago, when he dragged me back after I was released from prison. But I never lied to you, not even once. I floated beside Evan, thinking silently. The examination room door opened. Evan stood outside, his tone much more respectful. "Mr. White, what exactly is wrong with Steve's eyes?" Steve was unwilling to disclose the specific cause. Mr. White continued, "But based on his previous records, it's likely optic neuritis caused by an injury from 4 years ago." Evan froze, muttering to himself, 4 years ago? Ha, he seemed to let out a breath of relief, saying with certainty, "He must have gotten into a fight in prison. He still has some sense of shame. He never said a word about being injured." "That's not what happened," I quietly retorted. "I didn't get into a fight with anyone." Evan couldn't hear me, and even if he could, he wouldn't believe me, would he? When we left the hospital, the sky had turned gray. The dark clouds looked like they were about to fall. Evan sat in the car, his face tense. He ruthlessly questioned his assistant. "Why haven't you found him yet? He doesn't have an ID, he can't leave the country. How hard can it be to find one person in J City?" The assistant apologized while making calls to check on the search progress. Evan closed his eyes and leaned back against the headrest. He bent his knuckles and pressed them against his brow. The wrinkles there hadn't even smoothed out. He took out his phone and opened the search page. I saw him type, "optic neuritis." The page refreshed. I saw many results. Rapid vision loss, pain in the eye socket, pain with eye movement, can lead to blindness. Evan's finger swiped faster and faster. He skimmed past long blocks of text, then scrolled back up to reread them. He suddenly turned off the screen. He said urgently to his assistant, "Turn around and go to South City Prison. Now." I flinched. Even after a year, the name South City Prison still terrified me. I stared out the window, wondering, I wonder if I'm dead already. It would be better if I were. Then I could disappear forever and never have to go back there. I was forced to follow Evan into a world of gray. The sky was gray, and the walls of South City Prison were gray too. Evan was led into a low-ceilinged room. He said to the prison guard officer, "I need to see all of Steve's records from his 3 years here." "And who are you to Steve?" Evan blurted out, "His brother." The guard smiled. "So you're the brother Steve was always talking about. But it seems you never came to visit him once while he was serving his sentence, did you?" Evan stopped in his tracks, lowering his gaze. "I just wanted him to seriously reflect on his actions." The guard said no more, pulling a thick stack of files from a cabinet. "Steve's health was never very good, so his file is thicker than the others. Take your time." The door closed, and the room fell silent. I was familiar with this kind of silence. Oppressive, like a never-ending flight through a dark night. Evan opened the first page. He stared at it for a long time. Upon admission, the inmate had a 10-centimeter long wound on the back of his head, sustained prior to incarceration, accompanied by persistent dizziness, vomiting, and other symptoms. He was later sent for medical treatment and diagnosed with an intracranial hemorrhage, receiving conservative treatment in the hospital. The page included a hospital discharge summary. It read, "Patient refused surgery and was informed of the multiple potential complications of the blood clot, including but not limited to pressure affecting the central nervous system for speech, motor functions, vision, etc." Yes, I wasn't lucky enough to avoid the complications. Mr. White said, "My optic neuritis was caused by pressure from the blood clot. But if I had the surgery right after the injury, could have caused irreversible damage or even death. I wasn't afraid of dying, but I was afraid of causing more trouble for Evan while I was in prison." Evan turned the page. He saw the therapy records from the prison psychologist. The doctor asked, "How did you injure your head?" I remained silent, refusing to answer. The doctor asked again, "Why did you refuse the surgery? Aren't you worried about future complications?" I answered, "Surgery costs a lot of money. I made a mistake. I didn't deserve to receive anything. So, after you're released, is there anything you want to do?" I shook my head numbly, then suddenly nodded, "Yes. I want to see my brother, just for a moment. He surely wouldn't want to see me again. So I just needed to hide somewhere dark and sneak a peek at him. I hoped to see him healthy, to see him living a happy life. Evan deserved to start a new life, not to be in a place like this, investigating something so insignificant." Evan finally closed the file, but he didn't leave. He found the guard and said, "Can I see Steve's father, Stephen 1? "No." I crouched down, burying my head in my arms. "Don't go see him. I don't want to see him again." Half of my soul stubbornly stayed put, while the other half was pulled and torn by Evan. It hurt so much. I had no choice but to drag my shattered soul and follow him to face Stephen 1. For years ago, how did Steve injure his head? Through the glass. Stephen 1 sat with his head down in the metal inmate's chair. Hearing Evan's words, he lifted his dark, dull eyes and burst out laughing. "Ha ha ha, my son's an idiot, but you're even dumber than he is. Ha ha ha." Evan slammed both hands on the table. He was furious, grinding out the word, "Answer me. Because of you." Stephen 1 yelled. He continued, "When the building collapsed, it was my idiot son who threw himself on top of you, who took the hit from that wall for you. What did you say?" The color drained from Evan's face in an instant, leaving only disbelief. He muttered to himself, "That's impossible. He was in on it with you. He helped you kidnap me for money. Why would he care if I lived or died? He cared more than anything." Stephen 1 cut him off loudly, saying, "That kid doesn't give a damn about money. He only cares about you. You think he was there to help me? That fool was there to save you. It's true. I really was a fool. foolish enough to think that giving Stephen 1 a lot of money would make him stay far away from us. Stephen 1 was a gambler and abuser. My mom couldn't take it anymore and ran away with me when I was less than 3. She was taken in by Evan's mother and worked as their housekeeper for 15 years. They went from being employer and employee to sisters who were inseparable. I went from being called a bastard and jinx by that man to being the young master of the family. But all of that came to a screeching halt the moment Stephen 1 showed up. He blackmailed me and got a lot of money. But it wasn't enough for him. He and some others kidnapped Evan. Evan's mom and I called the police and went with the ransom money to save him. In the old factory, Evan was unconscious. The moment Stephen 1 took the money and ran, Evan scrambled up to chase him. I held him back, saying, "Don't. It's too dangerous. Let the police catch the bad guys. Your safety is the most important thing." I didn't have time to say it. The factory's dilapidated wall suddenly collapsed. Stephen 1 had seen the police approaching and rammed the structure with his car. I threw myself in front of Evan, but I couldn't protect his mother. An iron beam landed right on her head. Evan's father had died young. His mother was his only family. A senseless disaster, and he lost the only family he had left. I became a sinner and was thrown in jail. Stephen 1 was right. I really am a jinx. And Evan was right too. The crime I committed, a 3-year sentence, could never be enough to atone for it. Stephen 1 leaned back in his chair and said, "That kid was scared I'd find him and his mom, and even more scared I'd find out about you too. The second I mentioned you, he gave me the money, no questions asked. So easy to fool. What a waste of devotion. He cared so much about you, and you insisted he was my accomplice." Evan shuddered, his hands clenched into tight fists. Stephen 1 got up and leaned forward, hissing, "Oh, you're just figuring this out now? You haven't tortured that kid to death yet, have you? You might want to take it easy on him. If he dies, you'll never find anyone else in this world as devoted to you as he was." "Shut up," Evan roared, slamming a fist against the glass. "You shut your mouth." Stephen 1 laughed triumphantly as he was led away by the guards. A low rumble of thunder sounded in the sky, followed by a fine drizzle that splattered against the window pane. "It's wet." I wiped my eyes and saw Evan's face clearly. It was all wet. Evan gasped for breath, his hands braced on the table. He seemed to have lost some of his color. He had turned gray too. "Steve," Evan said in a choked voice, "where the hell did you run off to? Come back. I'll take you even if you're blind. I won't throw you away." His phone suddenly buzzed. Evan frantically answered it. "You found him, right?" The voice on the other end was muffled by the rain. Sounded noisy and low. "We found him, but I'm so sorry. Mr. Smith, he's already passed away." "What?" Evan's brow furrowed violently, but the sound that came out was like a gasp of air. He was suddenly furious. He yelled at the person on the phone, "You're lying. Keep looking. Go and keep looking for me." The person on the other end was silent for a few seconds, then said, "We found Mr. Smith at the foot of Clearview Mountain. By the time we arrived, he was no longer breathing." Evan's hands began to tremble violently. The phone fell to the floor. His eyes went vacant as he muttered to himself, "No, it can't be. Can't be. How is that possible?" I stood behind him. I watched his back slowly hunch over, shaking. Finally, he collapsed to his knees. The person on the phone was anxiously asking, "Are you all right? Where is he now?" Evan said, "Get him to the hospital immediately, right now." The other person agreed, then hung up. Evan picked up the phone. He left and got in his car. At the same time, he called several medical experts in the city. He requested that they all rush to Central Hospital. "There's no use, Evan. I'm already dead." I sat in the back seat, seeing Evan's bloodshot eyes in the rearview mirror. Shouldn't he be happy? Why is he so sad? It must be because he's not finished with his revenge yet. He said so himself, I remember. That day he had been rough with me, and I ended up passing out in the bathroom. Evan was used to it, and only carried me back to bed when he was satisfied. He went about his day as usual, morning workout, then work. It wasn't until he came home from work that he saw me, barely breathing. Get a doctor now. The last shred of my consciousness was jolted back by his shout. Evan gripped my shoulders tightly, calling my name. His palm pressed down on the bleeding bite mark. It hurt so much. I frowned slightly. A warm tear that slid from the corner of my eye was wiped away by his rough thumb, rubbed away. Steve, he said through gritted teeth, I'm not finished with my revenge. How dare you die? I had no right to a good life or a good death. Because Evan hated me. He hated me for stopping him from chasing after Stephen 1. He hated that I was the son of his mother's killer. I don't blame him, because under the circumstances it really did look like we were working together. But now, I have nothing left to atone with. Evan, what more do you want? He sped all the way to the hospital entrance. His assistant came up to him, his face hesitant. Evan, are all the specialists here? Evan asked as he walked quickly towards the emergency room. Evan. The assistant stopped him, gesturing with his right hand. Mr. Smith, he's over here. He's been revived and moved to a room? Evan seemed very calm, but his hands, hanging by his sides, were trembling. I'd seen this reaction before. When Evan saw his mother lying in a pool of her own blood, the assistant shook his head, saying with difficulty, the specialists came and left, because Mr. Smith, lividity has already set in. It was too quiet. Even the sound of Evan's breathing was barely audible. He stood in a daze under a white fluorescent light. His face was illuminated, deathly pale. After a few minutes, he slowly started to move, walking towards the room at the end of the hall. The air grew colder. Evan's feet felt as if they were slowly freezing. His pace became slower and slower. The door opened. I saw my own faint outline under the white sheet. Evan followed me in. He lifted the white cloth and gently touched my face. In a gentle tone I hadn't heard in so long I'd almost forgotten it. He said, Steve, wake up. You don't have to keep your eyes closed just because you can't see. I'll get the best doctors in the world to cure you. The person under the sheet had their eyes tightly closed, as if truly in a peaceful sleep. So Evan braced his hands on either side of the narrow gurney. He leaned down, looking into my now cold eyes, and said, I'm sorry, Steve. I know everything now. You went there that day to save me, didn't you? You were injured that day, that's why you can't see now. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have disbelieved you, I shouldn't have. Evan couldn't go on. The muscle in his cheek twitched, his throat worked. He seemed to be enduring an intense pain. Thunder rumbled outside, and the rain grew heavier. It's thundering, Evan said softly. Steve was always so scared of thunder. He'd wake up in the middle of the night and sneak into my bed with his pillow. Now, he choked up, his voice becoming a whisper. Why are you so quiet? As night fell, Evan remained motionless beside the body, like a gray, decaying old statue. It wasn't until a police officer knocked and entered that he moved. Evan, we extracted DNA from another person under Mr. Smith's fingernails. Our initial assessment is that he didn't fall by accident. In that regard, is there anyone suspicious in your circle? Evan froze. His gaze slowly moved to my graying fingertips. I followed his gaze. My memory instantly flashed back to the day I fell. After Evan left, a strong wind blew across the mountaintop. I took out my phone and fumbled to turn on the flashlight. The next moment, the phone was snatched from my hand. It was too dark. I stared blankly, but could only see a dark, shadowy figure. I thought it was a robbery. You can have the phone, but please, take me down the mountain. I won't call the police. The person on the other side let out a delicate laugh, tossed the phone off the mountain, and asked, So you're really blind? My body stiffened. I recognized the voice. Miss Emily, Evan has already gone down the mountain. If you call him now, you can still catch him. She moved closer. But I came to find you. Then, her voice turned vicious. Steve, you have only yourself to blame for getting in the way. Evan actually said that even after we get married, he would still live with you. He even warned me not to meddle. On what grounds? The strong wind made her voice sound eerie. A blind man, accidentally falling off a cliff. That seems pretty normal, right? A powerful shove came out of nowhere. I fell backward, my hands instinctively grabbing forward. In the moment I fell, I ripped the bracelet from her wrist. The despair and sense of weightlessness were seared into my memory. I closed my eyes, then opened them again, and looked at my own empty palm. The Emily we met at the mountain entrance that day. She must have been going back to retrieve the bracelet. I looked at Evan, thinking, you're going to say there's no one, right? Two families have been business allies for decades, community of shared interests, and marriage partners. Evan is so rational. How could he possibly expose Emily for someone as insignificant as me? Evan considered for a moment, then spoke. Yes. My eyes widened as I heard him say, Emily, the only daughter of the president of the Fong Corporation. He explained the situation of meeting Emily at the mountain entrance in detail to the police and provided information on the car that took her home that day. The police took simple notes and collected evidence. Evan, we will investigate the lead you've provided. We will need you to appear in court as a witness later. Evan nodded and asked, will she get the death penalty? The officer replied, if she is the murderer, the judge will determine the sentence. Evan closed the door and returned to the body. He looked intently at the person lying there, as if begging, if I catch the person who hurt you, you'll wake up, won't you? Please, Steve, wake up and punish me. Wake up and do all the things I did to bully you back to me, okay? I looked down and smiled bitterly. If I were alive, I would never punish you. I would ask to never see you again. An entire night passed. Evan waited, but I never woke up. The door to the morgue opened. When the assistant saw Evan, his face was filled with shock. Overnight, Evan's full head of black hair had turned completely white. He turned his head, his voice so hoarse it was barely audible. What is it? The police officer behind the assistant walked in. Evan, please come with us to the station to assist with the investigation. Have you caught Emily? Evan asked. The suspect claims she was instructed by someone else and has identified you as the mastermind behind Mr. Smith's murder. The officer unfolded an arrest warrant in front of him and continued, now, please come with us. His wrists were handcuffed. Then he turned to look at me. So, this is what it feels like, he said softly, tears streaming down his face again. When Steve was wrongly accused, he must have been in even more pain than I am now. Not pain. I looked at him coldly, correcting him. It was agony. At that time, Evan's mother had died a tragic death. My mother rushed to the hospital, saw her body, and instantly lost her mind. She knelt before the body. She knelt before the expressionless Evan. She kept saying it was all her fault, that she had brought ruin upon their family. The day I was arrested, she jumped into a river and died. The police car drove over the bridge. I sat inside and saw her body being pulled from the water. I wish it had been me who died, I thought at the time. True agony doesn't fade with time. Instead, it gets planted deeper and deeper inside your body. The agony was nourished by Evan's revenge. It grew larger and larger, devouring my hope, my desires, and my feelings for him. So now I feel nothing. Evan, I don't think I love you anymore. He couldn't hear me. He was taken away by the police. I still couldn't get far away from him. I could only watch as he was interrogated. The police said, we compared the DNA from the tissue under Steve's fingernails with Emily's, and it's a match. But when we were collecting hair samples from Emily, we found traces of Mr. Smith's blood in your car. Do you have anything to explain? Evan's expression was cold. His lips pressed tightly together. He wasn't passively resisting. He was confessing. He wanted to punish himself. To punish himself by enduring everything I had endured. Unfortunately, other than making himself feel better, it had no effect. Leaving the interrogation room, walking down the long corridor, Emily approached from the other end, a cruel smirk on her face. As they passed each other, she suddenly stopped, and in a low, neurotic voice, said, Evan, when I went down the mountain and found Steve, he was still alive, clinging to the bracelet and refusing to let go. But I only said one sentence, and he immediately stopped resisting. Emily's expression was ecstatic. Do you know what I said? Evan's eyes were bloodshot, his teeth clenched, and he was panting heavily. The police dragged Emily away. The distance between them grew. I said, Emily yelled from the end of the corridor, Evan sent me to kill you. He said you should have died a long time ago. Ha 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 ha. The laughter faded into the distance. But Evan could no longer stand. He collapsed to the ground. It was me, he said, trembling. I killed you. Steve. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The truth is, I love you. I've loved you since 4 years ago. I've always loved you. It's okay, Evan. And don't say the word, love. It's pretty ridiculous. I stood to the side, my eyes falling on his head of white hair. Death, it seems, didn't make me particularly sad either. It's better than this, than being wasted by you for a lifetime. The police weren't so easily fooled. They eventually uncovered the truth. But for obstructing justice, Evan was still sentenced to a year of probation. He couldn't go to prison, so he locked himself up at home, going nowhere. The old butler went back to his hometown, taking cotton candy with him. Evan seemed to not care about anything anymore. He covered all the floors in the house with carpet and replaced all the furniture with round-cornered pieces. Then he would call for me at night. He'd say, Steve, you can come out now. The house is covered in soft carpets. Even if you fall, it won't hurt. Later, when he couldn't find me, he boarded up all the windows and doors. Not a single sliver of light could get in. Then, he removed the carpets and wrapped a thick black cloth around his own eyes. Steve, I'm just like you now. I can't see anything either. Being unable to see was like having his legs cut off. Just like I was. Evan was always falling, his body covered in bruises. One time, he fell down the stairs. He injured his leg, too, and the pain kept him up all night. Evan seemed sick, insane. He was a withered husk of a person, more like a ghost than I was. Both he and Emily were sentenced, and the marriage was off. The company was engulfed in a PR crisis, and its stock price plummeted. The board of directors couldn't reach him by phone. They couldn't find him either. Ultimately, they fired him. A workaholic who put his career first now had nothing. You don't have to do this. I looked at the crazed Evan and said, stop doing these pointless things. You should just handle my final affairs so I can leave you sooner. After that, Evan seemed to have actually heard me. When the funeral home called for the 3rd time to ask about the time for my cremation, he finally left the house. The sunlight was too harsh for him, but he didn't wear sunglasses. His eyes were stung by the light, bloodshot and swollen. Evan seemed calm as he methodically took care of my final arrangements. Then, holding my urn, he ascended Clearview Mountain alone. It seemed Evan's eyes really couldn't see anymore. He fumbled his way up, climbing very slowly. The weather was clear. By the time Evan reached the summit, the sun was about to set. Evan dug a small hole by the edge of the cliff. He placed the urn inside and buried it. Then he sat quietly by the cliff's edge, next to my ashes. Steve, you like it here, don't you? Evan said gently, look, it's sunset. I sat down too, and turned my head to look at him. The day I fell, the view was just like this, the orange sun hanging over the mountain peak. Evan's face, reflected in the vast, colorful sunset. That day, he didn't even glance at me. He just asked coldly, is it beautiful? I stared at his profile without blinking, and foolishly said, beautiful. He was asking about the scenery, but I was talking about him. But today, I just want to properly look at the view before me. It's so beautiful. I smiled, thinking, this world is truly beautiful. If I can be reincarnated as a person in my next life, I want to see the world properly, instead of just following closely behind one person. With my ashes buried, my soul gradually grew lighter. Finally, it was time to leave. The sun sank, gradually swallowed by the horizon. On the darkening mountaintop, the wind picked up again. I was slowly lifted into the sky by the wind. I saw Evan stand up, stumbling, getting closer and closer to the cliff. Steve, wait for me. Okay? With that, he opened his arms. Like a thin, withered leaf, he fell towards the bottom of the cliff, and I went in the complete opposite direction from him, flying higher and higher. until I flew into a blindingly bright light. Steve, Steve. My feet touched solid ground. I followed the sound of the voices, and sure enough, I saw my mom. Next to her was another person, Evan's mom. They were arm in arm, as close and wonderful as they were in life. I ran over and hugged them. Let's go together, Mom said. I smiled and nodded, and walked forward with them. Just as we were about to enter a large golden gate, I stopped and looked back. Then I let out a long sigh of relief. No one had followed. From now on, Evan and I will probably never meet again,